Hey YouTube, it's Vin from the Facebook page Owls by Vin. You probably heard of me. Today, we're talking about the big guns with this guy Keys over at Wildlife Inspired. Hey, you're 50 years old. Cut your hair. Arrogant bastard. Today, the dualies. Today I've got this ridiculous looking setup back here. This is my dualies. So I've got a 300 millimeter. Normally I would mount this with a full frame body, but I've got a D500 on here for the sake of today. So crop sensor, 300 millimeters on the top, on the bottom. I've got 400 millimeters and my Z9. Now, what are the applications for this? Well, there's two. One is record video on the top, shoot your stills on the bottom. And it works. I'll show you some of the downfalls of this, but it does work. The other application is a really long lens on the bottom. So let's say a 600 with a teleconverter, and imagine you're shooting raptors way out in the distance. One flies in close, you jump up here and you've got like maybe a 300 millimeter lens. So on the bottom, you're effectively at like 800. On the top, maybe you're 300 or 400. And it just allows you two different focal lengths very quickly. So instead of using like a sling, you'll see some people that do this. They've got a shorter sling on their hip, but this is just really easy to get back and forth to. And it works. Like it actually works. I've used this in the field once or twice. I do not take this setup out and hike with it. Most of the time I'm just using it right in my yard because it feels safe. I've got the Promedia Gear, the Katana Jr here, which you guys know I love this thing. And this allows me just enough room. So I've got one in a side mount configuration on the bottom, and then one using the cradle provided by the gimbal on the top. And this is it. Now, there's some downsides to this. I'm going to show you this setup first, then I'm going to show you another setup over there where you can actually get two lenses on one gimbal, or in this case on one fluid head, and it works. So let me spin the camera around. I'm going to show you the pros and cons of this setup, particularly for video.
This is the setup. This is what it looks like when you've got nothing on it. And I'll go through a couple of the highlights here. The key element is that little arca clamp adapter. It's a 90-degree adapter, so you can configure it so that one of the clamps is clamped onto the rail one way and the other one then becomes your side mount. I am not disclosing this out there. I don't want anybody to buy this. I can't vouch for this product because I've only used it on this setup. I've used that clamp for about 6 months now, but on this gimbal altogether, I just bought the gimbal like 2 weeks ago, so I have not used this extensively. I've used it a couple times like this in this configuration. It works really well, which I'll kind of get to at the end, but it works really well for pictures. If you want to have two different focal lengths, a longer and a shorter, I'll show you the problems with video in just a second. So this is the kind of the key element is moving that cradle up to the top and then putting a side mount adapter on the side. You could, if the swing arm was long enough, you could maybe get two of those cradles on here. Promedia Gear sells one. I think Really Right Stuff sells one as well. But you'd have to have a really tall gimbal head. And the Katana could be big enough to do that. The Promedia Gear Katana might be big enough to put the two cradle arms with. I did this setup on the Katana. It was actually like roomy. On the Katana Jr, it's a little tight. So that's what that setup looks like when there's nothing on it. Let me show you what it looks like now in the field, and I'll pause once in a while just to show the back of the camera. Notice where I'm pointed here, and then watch when I get up to the top one. So if I was doing stills down here and video on the top, there's the problem. That camera's pointed about a foot above the subject. So I'm not even capturing the subject, and you'll see it when I do a kind of a live preview of both where I'm at shooting one and recording the other. So at the end of the video, I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So there you can see it. There's the problem. If that top one, if you were an engineer or you could machine something just to make that plate, the plate on the foot just tilt down about 2 degrees, it would work. There's also a thing called convergence, which means as it's closer, it hits like this. But if you're further away, then that convergence point would move. So in a perfect world, you'd actually be able to adjust it. But I think if it tilted a little bit one way or the other, you'd be close enough that it wouldn't matter. You'd be closer than this. When it's parallel, perfectly parallel, that's where the problem is. So anyway, that's what that looks like on the back of the cameras. And then here, again, with that convergence point, if it's further away, it's a little bit better. So notice where I'm at there. I'm focused on that little ribbon that's tied to the tree. And on the top one, I've got a little bit more showing than I did in the first one, but still not really great because if the subject's down at that white stuff, I'm recording above it. Now, this is a different setup that I use, especially for video. So that the previous setup was more my, if I'm doing two different focal length lenses. This one I'm using for video. There's my stills. There's my video. Look at how close this setup is. So this is set up on, and I'll go over it at the end of the video, but this is set up on a fluid head. And I'll show you the plates at the end. But what I wanted to show you is how much better, and here's the setup. I just took a still frame, but that's what the setup looks like. But how much better the video is when it's angled together. So this is what I'm doing when I'm shooting video. So I can actually just hit the record button with one. And then on the other one, I'm taking stills while this one's recording and I'm doing nothing. I'm praying that the autofocus works without me being behind the camera. And if it's tracking the subjects accurately, then I'm good. So I did this once when I was shooting waterfowl this winter. I set it up on the bottom edge of the water. I recorded from one camera as I was able to photograph and take good quality pictures with the other. You can, in many cameras, shoot with video, record video, and then take pictures as you're doing it. On my systems, those pictures are JPEGs, and they're basically just extrapolations of what the camera is seeing at that moment in time. It also throws the video off a little bit. So preferred method is just record off of one, dedicate one, and then do stills off of another. It works. It works. Now here's the problem. With the fluids heads, you've got so much weight on top of this that if you tilt it, and I dropped a camera this way. I brought it home, set my tripod down, did not lock that head out. It started to creep slowly. It built momentum, and then it tipped the tripod over, and the camera hit the ground. Fortunately, I was inside and didn't cause any damage. But yeah, not good. So you can see it's top heavy, and once it starts going, it wants to like flop over. The Promedia Gear setup that I had, where it's one on top of the other, you may be able, and I'm able to with this setup, find it almost a perfect balance point. In fact, if you rewatch the video in the beginning, you'll see my hand's not even touching it, and both of those cameras are loose, and they're just pretty well balanced, so it doesn't flop or go anywhere or roam around. But yeah, with this one, if you start moving it forward, it will flop. Now, let's look at some video. So I took video. All the video you're seeing, I'm not behind the camera. I literally just hit the record button, and it did what it did. So I'm not touching this. It's with my old D500 for the video, and I'm taking stills with the Z9. The reason I mention that is you're going to see the autofocus is off. The DSLRs don't track video as well often, so especially if you're not behind it. And here's what it looked like. When I had, and this is with the one on top of the other. So this is the gimbals mounted this way. When my Z9 was focused on the Hummingbird on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, you can see the Hummingbirds all the way at the bottom of the frame down there, just about off the frame. So this setup does not work very well for this. I'll show you one more example where, again, like I'm focused with the Z9 on the Hummingbird, or the converse happens where I focus with the video camera on the bird, but then my stills are off. So let's look at here. Here I'm looking, and I've got the Hummingbird. Now I'm looking behind the D500, recording it. And I'll show you what happens. Let's see here. Let me find him. There he is. All right, so now I've found the Hummingbird. Stop. And notice on the right-hand side, when the video was centered, when I had the Hummingbird centered in the video, my stills pushed the Hummingbird way off. So it's not, at the end of the day, this setup wasn't great for me until, again, if there's an engineer out there or somebody who could just tilt that camera one way or the other, then it would work. I'm not the guy to do that. I MacGyvered a lot of this stuff. I made a lot of this. I like the DIY mindset, but I'm not an engineer. I can't make this stuff. If you've got a 3D printer at home or a machine shop, you probably could figure this stuff out. All right, let's take another look now. Here we got a new set of videos. This is by the way, this is bee balm, scarlet bee balm. It loves this stuff. These hummingbirds visit me, 20 times a day to this plant. I've got 3 of them. I think in one scene, they chase each other around a little bit. So here he's just working. This is just a pretty video to watch. I thought it'd be fun to watch these guys feed. Unfortunately, the flowers look pretty bad right now, but they're all dying back. But there's another set of flowers. He flies over to a different species of bee balm. and we'll get a chance to look at that. But in this one, what I'm going to show you is that once they're set up side by side, for my configuration for video and stills, it actually worked pretty well. I was able to take pictures, photographs, and it worked. So let me find them here in the back of the camera. There we go. And there's a still. D500 recording on the left of that, again, side by side this time. D500 on the left, the still image from the Z9 on the right, and you could see the subject is pretty close. So if I were recording, just hitting the button and letting it go, just do your thing. I'm going to now take some stills. Boom. It actually works side by side. Again, I'm not telling you to go travel with this setup. I'm not even telling you to go make this setup. I am going to show you the components I used to make this at the end. And then here's one more. Unfortunately, here's the detriment of the, when you're, the good thing is it's all on one gimbal. So when you turn this thing, everything turns together. On the left, you can see if it was in focus, at least the subject's in the middle of the frame. And on the right was the still image that I captured at the time. None of this is edited. Obviously, this is just for the point of the video. But I thought it was kind of cool to take you literally exactly what I see, exactly what I recorded, and how it worked. And there, did you see that other hummingbird come in and swoop them away? Okay, now in this set, what I did is I'm actually, just to stop, I actually synced this. I'm recording with both on the same fluid head. So now I'm not doing stills. Now I did this, I mean, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to record two different angles of the same subject, but I did it to show you where they track and how close they are in this setup. And again, on one of my lenses, I'm able to just kind of like, on both of them actually, just tilt them in like half a degree, just with the little bit of play that's in there, and it helped a lot. But I thought this was kind of neat because you're seeing the D500 track on the left versus the Z9 tracking on the right, synced probably within, I don't know, a hundredth of a second. So I got it pretty close when I did the editing on this. I thought it was pretty neat just to watch these guys fly around, and you could see just exploring those B-bomb. And you could see that the subject, when I get it in the middle, it's pretty close in both. It's just a little bit off. So it's not bad. It's actually not a bad setup to try. I've been playing around with this for about a year. 9 months ago, I made this prototype, and it took me a long time to figure out to get the components to use. But anyway, I thought this was kind of neat. Let me kick back over to the other video. Thanks for the brief interlude, the brief video interlude, and I will jump back over to the to concluding thoughts. What do you think? I like this do-it-yourself stuff. I built my own float blind. I built some stuff for my car. I like this stuff. I couldn't find a good solution out there. There is one product, it costs like $2,000, and it allows you to put two gimbals on something at the same time. That is not what I was after. I was after a low-cost, effective way to shoot video and stills at the same time, or to mount a long lens and a short lens at the same time. Long lens, short lens. I'll show you this setup first. Here it is. It's probably going to struggle to focus, but basically I showed it in the video. You've got your lighter lens actually works better on the top with the heavier lens on the bottom. That creates better balance in the system. If you put the heavy lens on top, it gets off kilter. So anyway, it does take this adapter. I'm reluctant to put this information out there. Let's see if I can get it to focus. There we go. Now you see the name brand. I'm reluctant to put it out there because if it fails, I don't want to hear about it. But anyway, this was my setup. I prefer this setup for two lenses: small lens, big lens. Don't carry this. I don't hike with it. I take all my gear out, and then I put this together, and then I put it on. I generally only use this when I'm like walking from the parking lot 30 or 40 feet. A couple times I've used this was birds in flight. So I used this to have a long lens for birds in flight and a short lens for birds in flight. It actually worked pretty well. Didn't like it as well for video for the reasons I showed you. Now let me jump over here to this on my side here. I've got on the tripod, I set up this Manfrotto video head. This is a very popular video head. It's cost effective. It's called a fluid head. And for those of you that have never used a fluid head, it has resistance that's called drag. So it turns fluid. For video, you don't want herky-jerky. You want fluid. So this gives you that nice fluid control. You will see a lot of wildlife photographers using fluid heads. if they're shooting video, but even for stills, I've seen people do birds in flight with fluid heads. So there's nothing wrong with fluid heads. I'll do a review on that, my personal opinion on that. Now, a couple things about the Manfrotto. It uses a different plate. I'm going to show you the bottom. I probably won't get it in focus, but the bottom of this plate is different than an Arca Swiss or an Arca compatible system. It's wider, so you can't mix and match. However, on this one, they do make a replacement. So you can replace this top piece. Kirk, I'll put the information down there. By the way, I ordered it. It's been on back order forever. This fluid head became so popular, and as far as I know, Kirk was the only one making this top plate to replace it and convert it to Arca. It's hard to get. I'll put the link down there if I find it. Take a look at it. What I did instead was I just adapted. So I keep the Manfrotto plate here, and I've adapted over here 2 Arca compatible clamps, and I've used these, they call these like cheese, what's the name? Like cheese boards, cheese grate. I don't know what the heck they call these things. They're very popular for video. All of these are made by a company called Small Rig that I really like. They have a lot of like gadgety things. But you'll see these 1/4/8, 3/8 holes pre-drilled everywhere, and you can configure them however you want. So this is what I do. Arca. Now here's the other thing. If I want to just do video, and I'm not going to shoot with 2, I'm just going to do 1 camera. Let me see if I can get this out real quick. But what I'll do is I'll slide this off. Okay, it's got a little safety button here. So that's what it looks like. That's that bigger Manfrotto clamp. And then I just took this Manfrotto clamp, and I found a very specific, very long Arca plate. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. Not the lightest solution, but it definitely works. Hopefully my mic's not picking up too much of this noise. And I can just lock this one down. Now what's crucial here is I've got to have this really long knob that clears this. So this plate works. I'll link this down there because I do think this is a viable option for people that can't get the Kirk adapter. That might be like $150. It's a very cost-effective way to do this. I have not used this for years. I can't vouch to the reliability of this clamp, but it's a nice long clamp, which makes me feel pretty good that it's secure in there. So that's what I do. I've modified. I've got this Manfrotto plate that converts to Arca. I've got the other one that converts to 2 Arcas. Again, with the caveat, if you do this, you're at your own risk. I don't want to hear about it. Do your own research. This was my project for me. I knew I was going to get questions about it, so I decided at the end of the video just to show you how it's set up. But I do think even if you, this is a viable solution, even if you're not doing the video part. If you've got a fluid head and you just want to adapt it real quick, I find this to be easier than to change the bottom plate from Manfrotto to Arca. That seems like a pain in the butt. Just changing the clamp here seems to be a better option to convert it. And then again, for me, I've got 2. I popped the dually, I love saying that, the dualies on, and then I put this one on if I'm just doing video out in the field. And again, you can use this straight photography. I'll do a video on the fluid head for wildlife photography where, again, I'll record some action and show you how smooth it is. So that's my video today. What do you think? Like, meh? I mean, you can let me know down in the comments if this is stupid. Is there absolutely no way you would attempt this on your own? Is it foolish? I do not do this to try to be different or cool. I actually do it for practical reasons. I was out in the field. I'll tell you just real quickly. I was out in the field trying to record video on one tripod and stills on the other. And I was going back and forth, and I'd have to move this one, then I'd have to move this one. And I hated it. And from that moment on, I tried to find a solution where I could easily record and do stills, and this system actually worked very well to do video and stills together. But again, I wanted to show you the other setup. If you're doing a long lens, I actually like this setup much better if I'm just using 2 different focal length lenses, because it stays much more balanced once you get it set. Again, with all that heavy weight on top of here, it will absolutely flop. So you do have to be careful if you're doing this out in the field. You've been warned. Make sure you lock this out even if you're just not monitoring it for a minute, because as soon as it gets top heavy, I showed you in the video, it folds. All right, that's my video today. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments. Am I crazy? Have you done this? Have you seen other setups? I've seen 1 or 2 other people set up two lenses on one gimbal before. So if you've got some cool other ideas, let's share them out there. Thanks for tuning in. As always, appreciate your support, and let's continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.